Hello.
Mario, Ernie,
Oh, hello. We are page 205.
Correct.
okay.
Let's wait for the forces to gather a little bit. Some water.
Hello. Chaim. Chaim,
Yes.
you connected yesterday. You don't read your texts
If you had any idea how many texts I get on my phone,
on WhatsApp. On
but
WhatsApp.
yes, on WhatsApp.
Oh, okay.
WhatsApp and email and text messages and Facebook Messenger and Zoom chats, which because I use at work. It's nonstop.
Me the same, but this is a particular one. It's the group, the Tzurba group.
We're on page 205. We're talking about being mafsik between the Netilas Yadayim and Amotzi.
Hey,
Water is not cold. But the arrowhead water, what happened all of a sudden? Say it again? I know. But it's not like that. We usually have water. Yeah.
Ernie, if you took a nap in the afternoon and then you sat down to learn, do you have to wash your hands too?
If you take a nap, I think you have to wash your hands.
Depends how long you slept for, isn't it? Half hour or something like that.
Yeah, I think if you took like a 2-hour nap, a real nap, you have to wash. Because remember the reasons why we do it. There's a machlokes. Some say it's ruach ra, but others say is yadai maskani yosei. Our hands are, so when you're sleeping, your hands touch certain
yeah,
parts.
but Ernie, if you have a nap with your clothes on, you don't have to wash your hands.
Okay, maybe.
I asked you. I mean.
But then you'd have the issue of ruach ra.
Okay.
I think we touched on this when we learned that Netilas Yadayim. But we'll have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
So we will conclude our study of Netilas Yadayim with the discussion of one of the most common issues that arises, interrupting in between reciting the bracha of Netilas Yadayim and reciting Amotzi upon the bread. Is there a limit to how much time may pass between Netilas Yadayim and Amotzi? Is one permitted to speak or otherwise interrupt before reciting Amotzi on the bread? Even if it is forbidden, what is the halacha if one spoke by accident? Must one repeat Netilas Yadayim or repeat the bracha? And is one permitted to answer amen to the bracha of someone else during this time? We're talking about, is answering amen to someone's bracha considered a hefsek? The Gemara in Brachas 42:8 states that one must recite the bracha immediately following the washing of hands. The Rambam interprets this statement as referring to Mayim Achronim, the washing that is performed before Birchas Hamazon, meaning which bracha are we talking about following washing? Says the Rambam. We're talking Birchas Hamazon, which follows immediately after Mayim Achronim. The Rambam does not state that the same halacha applies in between a Tis Yadayim and Hamotzi. Immediately after Mayim Achronim, you should bench. Lo yafsik b'neim. B'davar acher. Afil lishtos mayim. Acher shenat yodav b'achrona. You should not even drink water after you did Mayim Achronim. Osrat shivarch b'chas hamotzi. The Tur who cites the Rosh, right? The Tur was the son of the Rosh, Yaakov ben Arosh. Yaakov Balaturin is the son of the Rosh. So the Tur cites his father, who disagrees with the Rambam, and holds that one must be careful not to interrupt or speak in between the Bracha of Netilas Yadayim and the Bracha of Hamotzi, except about matters relating to the bread, such as bringing salt or a knife to cut it to the table. It means if there's no salt, you can say mela or knife, right? So the Tur says, "V'inagev yodav heitev." You should dry your hands, and then vivorch birchas hamotzi miyad. Va'adoni avi harosh, right? His father the Rosh. Hayaragil af b'rishonim shol hafsik v'shol daber. And he said that you should not interrupt or speak between the Tis Yadayim and the Hamotzi. The Shulchan Aruch cites both the opinion of the Rosh and the Rambam. Some say that's not a problem, being mafsik. The Shulchan Aruch quotes the second opinion of the Rosh and says that's the way we should follow. The Mishnah Berurah explains that according to the strict position, which is accepted by the Shulchan Aruch as the proper one to abide by, one may not speak nor even delay the recital of Hamotzi. Afilu b'shaya l'chud tilkamei the kosher can shlo daber bein time. You shouldn't speak in between. Afilu sicha mua, even small talk. Afilu b'divrei Torah chashav efsek lididu. According to the opinion that you shouldn't speak, you can't even say divrei Torah. L'tzarach lizar levad ma'advarim shem l'tzarach suda. Demutar lafsik l'kula al. That means things that are necessary about the meal, you may interrupt. The Ramon, his comments to Shulchan Aruch, adds that a short delay, even without speaking, the time it takes to walk 22 amos, is considered an interruption. That's why the custom, is to go very quickly from the Netilas Yadayim back to your table and not to delay too greatly because of this 22 amos business. 22 amos is 11 meters. So one should ideally not delay more than about 15 seconds in between Netilas Yadayim and Hamotzi. Nevertheless, if one must walk longer than this amount of time between the sink where one washed and the table where one is eating, or one is usually waiting for others to perform Netilas Yadayim before one person recites Hamotzi for everyone together, it is permitted to delay longer than this, says the Piskei Teshuvos. If you have to wait, let's say the balabas washes first, and he's going to be motzi the whole table with a motzi, and he has to wait for everybody else to come back. Let's say you're in camp where the washing station is very far. He's still allowed to wash his hands there, even if it's more distance to walk. Says the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah writes that if one delay longer in the time mentioned for reason other than ones mentioned above, one need wash hands again, provided one not lose focus on keeping his hands clean during this time. So let's say you were mafsik. The Mishnah Berurah is going to rule here that you don't have to wash again, as long as you kept your hands clean. The dad the ikr din tekifa hamuskar b'simin zeu rak mitzvah lechatchila. But Yevid afilu shlo harbe or hifsik b'time, even if we waited a long time, or he was mafsik ein tzarich lachzor v'lito yodav kol shelo yisiach daitu b'time shmiras yodav. As long as he didn't take his mind off his hands to make sure that they remain clean. So that's a kula. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch mentions another leniency that all agree that one is permitted to respond amen to the bracha of another in between it and Motzi. Yesh l'zar shul afsik ben Tisam Motzi. Aval mutar lanus amen alei the bracha shu shomea. But answering amen is not considered a hefsek. Okay.
Ernie, is it preferable for the balabais to wait to be the last one to wash? So he does, since he's making the bracha, so they have less of a hefsek.
For him, well, that would be less of a delay for him personally.
Yeah, since he's making the bracha,
Correct.
does it not make any difference?
Well, no, I think it would. If he wants to be makpid, that he shouldn't delay these 22 amos, then he should wash last. That way he can walk directly and make a motzi. But the other people are going to end up delaying.
Yeah,
So it doesn't solve that.
I think it's a practical thing to wash last. How many people have, when you go wash first, you sit down, you wait, and then a bunch of people are sitting there yakking away. And you're waiting for them, to wash your hands. And it's like, you're waiting like 3 minutes, 3, 4, 5 minutes until they finally one washes.
Right.
So last, you can hurry everybody up.
And if you're last, you at least will try to avoid delaying. You don't
Yeah,
have
but I think the delay was also talking about that you got to walk a far way. It's not only sitting and waiting, but that you have to walk a far way. I think there was a lot to do with the halacha of walking a couple of,
Yeah, they didn't have the well. The well may have been far away.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem. I don't think sitting at the table was such a thing. It was, the way I'm reading
It's the same problem like sitting in shul and waiting for people to stop talking. It's the same hefsek.
If under that last scenario where the balabais is the last to wash, and while everyone is waiting, sometimes I've experienced, and maybe you have, but it's in the last 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, where everyone hums a nigun sometimes until you make hamotzi. Is humming a nigun an interruption?
I don't think so. Although I don't think so, because I'm used to doing that too. You're certainly not having a hesach hadas from your hands. It sounds like that's the biggest issue. You're allowed to say, bring the salt or bring the knife. That's not a hefsek. So, brimming a niggin. No, so bringing a niggin is certainly, you're trying to add, but it's a good question. They didn't bring the halacha here. Let's see if anybody says here. Minhag Yisrael Torah, that is.
But I don't remember this growing up, but it's
something that you see people do.
Yeah.
I've seen the same thing where people sing nigun. Not with words.
No, of course.
Right, not with words. 221. Hilchos Birchas HaMotzi. In the previous year, when we studied many of the halachos of Netilas Yadayim before eating bread. In this year, we will discuss the halachos related to the bracha hamotzi lechem min haaretz, as well as some related halachos concerning eating and distributing the bread or challah. First, we will discuss the wording of the bracha. The Gemara in brachas cites a machlokas concerning whether the proper wording of the bracha is motzi lechem min haaretz or hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Tana Rabbanan ma oimer. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's what the Tanakama says. Rav Nechemia oimer, motzi lechem min haaretz. Amar Rava. B'motzi kol amar lo pligi de ofik mashma. When you say motzi, it's referring to the past. Dichsiv, Kel motziyami Mitzrayim. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Ki pligi be hamotzi. Rabbanan savi hamotzi da'afik mashma. The Chachamim say that even using the word hamotzi, it's past tense, because you could think that hamotzi is lashon hoveh. It's the present who brings forth bread, not who brought forth bread. So the Rabbanan say hamotzi still could refer to the past, because it says hamotzi l'chomayim mitzura chalamish, refers to the Hashem who brought water out of the rock. Rav Nechemia Sover hamotzi the mafik mashma, he will bring it. Mashma the future tense, as it says, hamotzi etchem mitachat sivlot Mitzrayim. When Hashem was speaking to Moshe, he was talking about the future, that he's going to take them out. V'hilchasa hamotzi lechem haaretz. The Kaimelan Rabbanan, we pass like the Rabbanan, the Ami the Afik Mashma, that the words hamotzi also refers to the past tense. Now Rashi on this Gemara, what do you mean the Afik Mashma? Shahotzi kvar, that Hashem took out in the past. Vavadai bracha haguna, and that's a good bracha. Dilasha avar ba'inan. It has to be in the past. We're sitting down to benefit from this piece of bread that had been brought forth from the earth. It's not a bracha about a future bread you're going to eat. You're making a bracha on this bread who was brought forth from the ground. Now, the raya that the word motzi meant past tense, t'chsiv kel motzem mitzrayim, ucheshenemra parshas Bilam kvar yotzu. Right, Bilam is the one who said this. So when he said kel motziyam mitzrayim, Hashem had already taken them out of Egypt. Then hamotzi l'chomayim, when he said that he took water from the rock, ukvar hotzi, this was something that happened in the past. Those were the proofs of the Gemara that the word hamotzi was referring to the past tense. But from the Nechemia started the mafik mashma. In the future, he's going to take out of the ground. She'asid lahotzi, t'chsiv hamotzi yaschem. U'kshenemar pasuk zeh l'Moshe adayin lo yotzu. This was at the snap, when Moshe had a revelation by Hashem and was told to take them out. V'hamotzi l'chomayim adayin hayamotzi kol yimei hayosem b'midbar. And you're going to ask, says Rashi, what about hamotzi l'chomayim? It was bringing forth while they were in the desert. So it doesn't just refer to stuff in the past. According to the Gemara, both the Chacham and Rav Nechemia agree that the word motzi is past tense and may be used for the bracha over bread, which refers to Hashem having already brought the bread from the ground. They disagree as to whether hamotzi is past tense, Chachamim, or present and future tense Rav Nechemia. The Gemara concludes that the bracha follows the Chachamim, that hamotzi is past tense, and is the formulation that is used for the bracha hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Why does Rava conclude that the word hamotzi is used, which follows only the Chachamim, when the word motzi could have been used, to which even Rav Nechemia agrees? Would it not be better to use the term that fulfilled both opinions? The Rosh explains that a person must teach a novelty of some sort when reciting a bracha. Therefore, in this case, one should recite hamotzi to teach that the halacha follows the Chachamim. This idea is based upon the continuation of the Gemara, which states that if one recites hamotzi, then it teaches that the term refers to the past in accordance with the opinion of the Chachamim. So we're like being taught two things. Says the Rosh, When you make a bracha, there should be a chiddush there. When you say al bir chametz, means you're going to burn it in the future. And don't think that it means to the past. Tosfos gives a different answer as to why we didn't use motzi and fulfill both chachamim of Nechem. Right? The hilchos avabi the motzi kula amalo pligi the afik mashma. Tosfos is warning us that we could have used motzi lechem arts and that would have fulfilled both shitas. But biyushalmim the first time kadesh lo la'arva osyois kigon ha'olam motzi. For example, Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam motzi lechem. So the olam and mem would be combined, and then it wouldn't have no meaning. So they wanted to put a letter in between the mem of the olam and the motzi. V'avagav the belechem motzi lechem mina aretz. You also have mem and mem. Minami iki iru. So there we can have the same problem. Shari yosim the kroksiv matzmiach chatzir lebehema the esav lavodasa adam lahotzi lechem mina aretz. So there's a pasuk by David HaMelech in Tehillim that uses this phraseology lahotzi lechem mina aretz. Akin yesh livtzo b'shtei yadav. So you should hold the bread with two hands, which has 10 fingers. Besser it's both neged yud tevish b'mikrazeh. So this matzmiach chatzir lebevein, that pasuk, which has the words lahotzi lechem in haaretz, has 10 words. That's the remez that you should hold the bread with both hands, because the 10 fingers represents the 10 words in that pasuk. According to the Yerushalmi, saying the word hamotzi with the additional letter hey creates a gap between the letter mem at the end of ha'olam and the letter mem at the beginning of the word motzi, which helps people pronounce the words correctly. And then we had the phraseology in the pasuk in Tehillim of lotzi lechem na'aretz. Some achronim suggest a third approach to the question of why Chazal instituted specifically using hamotzi rather than motzi. They explain that since the term implies both the past and future tenses, it can teach important lessons. According to the Bach, hamotzi reminds us that Hashem has brought bread from the ground in the past and will continue to do so in the future in more miraculous ways. The Bach is the other commentator to the tour. The main one is the Beis Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo, and the Bach is the other commentary on the two on the other side. According to my humble opinion, the Das Chazal Levarcha Motzi, Dav Kadeshi Yechav Al Shavar B'Alabo. You should have in mind both the past and the future. Hainu, you're giving thanks that he brought this wheat out in the past that made this bread. That Hashem should continue doing that. That there will be cakes coming directly from the ground. And instead of harvesting wool from the sheep, wool garment will come directly from the earth. This is talking about la'asid lavo. Shneimar yi pisas bar ba'aretz. V'zeh she'omar mi b'choyso shalom nikirim tamin chachamu. This is why they said, from how a person makes brachas, you can identify that he's a Talmid Chacham. The famous story that a prospective father-in-law would invite the prospective chassan into the living room, and he would put plates of various foods, and he would see what kind of brachas he made. Does he know which bracha you say first, second, and to identify if he's a Talmid Chacham. Kloimar, given the medagdik levar hamotzi, the person is making the bracha hamotzi, avagav the motzi nami mashmal shavar, even though the word motzi also refers to past tense. Bichlal the Talmid Chacham machavin levarch al shavar al abo. By using the word hamotzi, it shows both kavanas, the past and the future. Al shavar k'mishmal most pruto, the past tense, which is the pasuk pshat. The al abo k'mashmos midrash shetotzi eretz l'kuskos ma'aretz, and it references the Chazal that we mentioned about the future, what the future bounty is going to be from the land. The Aruch HaShulchan takes a similar approach and suggests that the word amotzi teaches that Hashem has continuously enabled us through nature to prepare bread, and will do so in the future. Li nira, says the Aruch HaShulchan. The Bekavona kivnu l'loshen hazeh, loshen hoveh, that they wanted to use the present tense as well. Shuhu kol al ha'avar ve'ha'atid. The word hamotzi, which is normally present tense, so the present sort of is the link between the past and the future. Shari loshen hamotzi l'cha mayim mitzur hu avar ve'hoveh. It's both. I did in the past, I'm still doing it. Shari be'esh shomer Moshe zeh haya yotzi mayim nasel. When Moshe said this, they were still getting water for the rock. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't remove his protection and guidance of the universe even for a minute. And he brings out bread forever. When you bake bread, Hashem is watching over that too. Karu Teva. But since this happens all the time, we think it's natural. But Ateva Atzmahu Eloki. But nature itself is divine. Hashgacha Elokit al Neshi Tmidi and Lani Spal. We're not wondered by it because we get used to it, but it's still divine power. Avala mitbonein and nisim tmidi. Whoever looks at general nature, even just bread baking in the oven, these are miraculous things. V'zeu inyan shivisi Hashem l'negdi tamid, keeping Hashem in front of you all the time. Kloimar shebechol davar shani roeh urak Hashem b'vod v'einod. Everything that we see, we should be thinking that this is being sustained by Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Shulchan Aruch codifies the conclusion of the Gemara that the word hamotzi is used, and also states, in response to the Tosfos, that one should pause in between the letter mem of the words lechem and min haaretz. Yivarach hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and yitain revach bein lechem ubein min. Although the accepted text of the bracha is hamotzi, the Mishnah Berurah points out that b'di'evet, one certainly fulfills the obligation. If someone said motzi lechem min haaretz, you fulfilled the obligation with the word motzi. Hamotzi, baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, baruch behei kodim ameh. Mishnah Berurah says it's hamotzi, not motzi. But v'imbirech motzi yotza. And you should put a separation between hamotzi lechem min haaretz yitain reva. Hainu sheyafsik ma'at kedei shelo yibola. It shouldn't swallow up tachas lashono achas ma'amemim v'chein bein shar shtei oisiyos sheshavas ba'brachos, and any other similar two letters that are repeated in other brachos that we would say where two letters go together. Many of us are careful during Kriyat Shema. The avadatem meheira. So in Shema, there are a number of couple words that slur together that you have to be careful. Some Sidurim have a line in between those words. Take a look. If your Siddur has that, sometimes it'll have a line, a vertical line in between those words that people sometimes have trouble swallowing. So it's I think we learned that it was valuable during recitation of Kriya Shema to make sure we do the same thing. Additional halachos related to the amotzi. Holding the bread while reciting the bracha. And of course, you go to people's homes and you see different minhagim in terms of the B'tzias HaPas. So let's see what the halacha says about that. There are additional halachos concerning the procedure of the bracha of amotzi. We saw above that according to Tosfos, one should hold the bread or challah with all 10 fingers while reciting the bracha of amotzi. This is based upon the pasuk that mentions bringing forth bread from the earth in Tehillim 104 has 10 words. The Torah offers another reason that one must place his hands on the bread while reciting the bracha. Now we understand even more clearly why there's natilas yadayim before the amotzi, because you're going to be holding the bread with your hands. If your hands were tamei or whatever, you'd have more of a problem. Namely, because the 10 fingers correspond to 10 land-based mitzvos related to making bread. V'yitin shtei yodav alapas, sheyesh ben yud etzbos, keneged yud mitzvos atluyos b'pas. 10 mitzvahs that are connected to making bread. Number 1, lo sachrosh b'shor v'chamor. You're not to put a yoke between two species of animal, like an ox and a donkey. Now you need to yoke those animals to be able to plow. You can't have wheat unless you plow the earth. 2, kloim. You're not allowed to have a wheat and grape field together. Then you have mitzvah of leket. When you harvest the wheat, anything that drops, the aniyim can pick it up. Shikha, anything you forgot to harvest, the aniyim get. Peya, you have to leave the 4 corners of your field empty for the aniyim. Then there's bikurim, first fruits, even wheat, was brought up between Shavuos and Sukkot as bikurim. Truma, you had to separate at least 1/50th. That was the normal Beinanis shear to give to the Kohanim. Meiser Rishon, 1/10 of the crop to the Levi. Meiser Sheni, in the first and in the 6-year Shemitah cycle. So in the first and second and 4th and 5th year of the Shemitah cycle, the second Meiser is called Meiser Sheni. You had to bring that to Yerushalayim and eat it. Or you had to redeem it for money. If it was worth $100, you had to redeem it on $120, 20% penalty. And then you would, the Kedusha of the Meiser Sheni would go on the money. If you lived in Tel Aviv, you could take a train to Yerushalayim with the money, and not with 10 train loads of wheat. And you could purchase wheat in Yerushalayim with the money. In the 3rd and 6th year of the Shemitah cycle, you gave Truma, Meiser Rishon, and the second Meiser wasn't Meiser Sheni that belonged to you. You have to give it to the Aniyim as Meiser Ani. So that's 9. 10 is the mitzvah of challah, that when you're making a dough and it's a certain minimum amount, you have to separate some of the dough and give it to the Kohanim. Today we burn it. So ulakach yesh yud tevis bebirchas hamotzi, and yud tevis bepasuk matzmech chatzil b'ma. The yud tevis bepasuk einei kolachis aberu. The yud tevis bepasuk eretz chita usara gefen teina rimon. The yud tevis bepasuk v'tein lacha es because of v'tein lacha loki mitala shamayim mishpanei aretz v'rov dagan v'tirosh, which is a pasuk, which is a bracha pasuk. So for all these reasons, you should hold on to the bread with your 10 fingers. The Shulchan Aruch also rules that one must hold the bread while reciting the bracha for the reason given by the Torah. Ein levarach koidem sheyitfos alechem. You should hold on to the bread. Yitein shtei yodav ala pas b'sha bracha. Sheyesh ben yud etzbos k'neged yud matzos k'neged yud mitzvos atluyos b'pas. L'kach yesh yud tevis b'birchas hamotzi. Even in the bracha of hamotzi, there's 10 letters. The yud tevis b'posuk matzmech hatzir l'beima, which ends l'hotzi lechem in haaretz. The yud tevis b'posuk einei kolach es aberu. Hashem is giving us food in Ashrei. The yud tevis b'posuk eretz chitu sora gefen teina riman. The yud tevis b'posuk v'yitein lecha. The Mishnah Berurah writes that one need not repeat the bracha if one did not hold the bread when reciting it. The Mishnah Berurah also mentions a number of other points about holding the bread, including that one should ideally hold the bread directly in one's hands and not while wearing gloves. Poidim sheyitfos, shein mevarchem ala mitzvos, ela samach lasiyos. We don't make a bracha on lulav except right before we're going to do it. So uv'di'evet im birech the achakach not lebiyado. If he made the bracha and then picked up the bread, gam kein tzarich laso levarech. You don't have to repeat the bracha. And yitein shtei yadav. I knew the tov lasos came. Footnote: it would seem the Mishnah means that one must l'chatchila hold the bread while reciting the bracha, but holding with both hands is not required. It's merely good to do. See the Kaf HaChaim returns to Shulchan Aruch in this manner. Okay. Hainu the tov lasos came. V'im hu lavush. V'batei that if he's wearing gloves, nachon sheyasrim b'shas rabba, take them off. Kos v'achronim. Yishem Hashem yagbia hakikar. And on Shabbat, when you mention Hashem's name, that's when you lift the bread. And normally on a regular day, you'll only eat one piece of bread. So when you say Hamotzi Lechem min haaretz, you should lift the loaf. On Shabbos, you lift both of them. According to the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa and Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, we can infer from the Mishnah Berurah that when reciting Hamotzi on Shabbos, one should not hold the bag foil or plastic wrapping if it covers the challah. Many balabustas heat up the challah and they wrap it in silver foil. You gotta make sure to take the silver foil off and hold the bread itself. You should hold the challah directly in one's hands. See, however, Piskei Teshuvos, who writes that a plastic covering around the bread is considered bottle to the bread, and it's permissible to hold the plastic covering with the bread inside. See, the Be'er Moshe suggests that this may be permissible due to other principles within the laws of Chatzitza. Some of the Sephardic poskim, such as the Kaf HaChaim, present a slightly different custom than that brought in the Shulchan Aruch.
If Ernie, if
Yeah.
your intention, for example, on Shabbos is to cut the top bread, I understand obviously to hold the bread on top, but is it necessary also to uncover or take the bread out of the plastic for the bottom bread if you're not going to eat that one? Do you have to hold both or the one you intend to eat?
On Shabbos, you have to hold both.
Both. So therefore you should take the plastic or cover off both.
L'chatchila. Yes.
L'chatchila.
Right, because he brought an opinion of the Piskei Teshuvos that the plastic covering might be permitted, but l'chatchila, it's better to hold the bread itself. We're going to talk the various hidurim of you put one on top of the other. It's going to come. We have a lot more halachos in how we cut the bread. It's going to come, and when
I
to
mean,
cut.
I've seen other people, in particular, Krupkin comes to mind, is that when he would make a motzi, he would hold the challahs, but he would keep the challah cover on the challah.
Okay, we're gonna go through all of that.
Okay.
We will go through all of it. It will come up. And if it doesn't come up at the end, if we have questions, we'll go into all of those things. What does the Kaf HaChaim do? Before he starts the bracha, yaniach shtei yodav ala pas. You should put the two hands on the bread. Yaschil levorach atevas melech ha'olam. V'achar sheyomer melech ha'olam yitfos hapas ben shtei yodav v'yigmor habracha. So what he did is, this was the Kaf HaChaim, he would put his hands on it until melech ha'olam. Then he picked it up with his two hands and completed it. Now you notice these halachas isn't just meant for Shabbos. It's meant if we go out to Pat's and we eat bread, or wherever we eat bread, we have to have this, we're supposed to put our hands on the bread and make hamotzi. It's exactly the same thing. That's why the Mishnah Berurah brought that you should raise the loaf. You're talking about when there's only one loaf. When, during Chol, during Shabbos, where there's a din of Lechem Mishnah, you do two. But the same dinim apply during the week. One widespread custom associated with eating bread is dipping the bread in salt. In order to understand the reasons for this custom, we need to study a passage in the Gemara in Brachos. According to the halacha, one may not speak in between reciting a bracha on food and eating the food. However, the Gemara implies that one who speaks about matters directly related to eating the bread need not recite a new bracha, though it is forbidden l'chadchila. The Amoraim disagree about whether asking for the salt to be brought to the table and giving food to the animals are also considered related to eating the bread, or is it a hefsek? The Gemara then cites a ruling that one may not recite hamotzi before the salt is brought to the table, except for bread that has sufficient taste without salt. Amar Rav, tol bruch. If he told somebody, he made the bracha, and he tore the bread into pieces, and he wanted to give a piece to somebody else. And before the person who made the bracha, hamotzi, told the other person, take it and make a bracha. So that's not considered a hefsek for his own bracha. Ein tzarich levarach again. He does not have to, it's not a hefsek to make him recite the bracha a second time, because it's for the purpose of the bracha. But if he says havei liftan is like a dip. Tzarich levar. Or let's say havei melech, havei liftan, bring salt or bring relish. Tzarich levar. That's Rav. Because it's considered also part of the meal. He wants to dip his bread. If he said gvil toiri, go and prepare food for the ox. So the ox, preparing food for the ox is not has nothing to do with his meal. So then that's a hefsek and tzarich levarach a second time. The Rav Sheshes Samar, afilu gvil toiri nami and tzarich levarach. If he gave instructions to prepare food for the animals in between when he made his bracha, before he ate the bread, he doesn't have to make the bracha again. It's part of his meal as well. A person's not allowed to eat until he made sure his animals have eaten. Shenantati v'nosati esa b'sad chalavim techa. And only after the v'hoder v'achal v'savat. Amar Rav Bar Shmuel Rav Chia. Ein about Seyat, the one who cuts the bread. Rishai livsoat shaviu melech or lifton if they call echad. He makes sure that they've brought salt and dip in front of each person. Rav Bar Shmuel ikla bereish galus. Rav Bar Shmuel, who said this halacha, went to visit the house of the exilarch. In Bavel, a descendant of Hillel, also served as sort of the Jewish communal leader. He was called the Reish Galusa. Afikule rivta ubatzalade. And he saw that he broke the bread, and he did it without waiting for the salt and the relish to be brought. So Rabbi Bar Shmuel did this, and Rabbi Bar Shmuel had previously said that you're not allowed to break the bread until they bring salt. So they asked him, "Did you change your mind?" Armalu, less din sarach bashash. This bread is so high quality and refined that it doesn't need salt. So therefore, we don't have to wait in that case. If the bread is not good quality and its taste is not going to be good unless we put salt on it, then you have to wait. That Rashi gives us some explanation of some of these points in the Gemara, including the basis for the assumption that an interruption between the bracha and the action generally renders the bracha invalid, unless it relates to that action, and the reason for bringing salt to the table. Tol bracha, abutzeh koidem, shetam naprus, the one who cut the bread and made the bracha, before he eats his piece, he kept on cutting the hoshit lemisha etzel, and he handed a piece of bread to the guy sitting next to him. V'omer and said, "Tol mifluresesa, tol miprusa bracha. Here, take from this piece, and it's from the bracha. Afal pisha sach beintayim." So he spoke in between the bracha and his eating. Ein tzarich lasor levarech. V'afal gav the sicha hi hafsach, even though speaking is a hefsek. Somebody spoke between the tefillin shel yad, the tefillin shel rosh. He has to do it again. When after slaughtering a chaya or an oath, you have to cover the blood. You cannot be mafsik in between. In this case of eating bread, if the whole thing is considered for the sake of the bracha, it's not a hefsek. And a viu melech nami bracha. Bringing salt is a tzorach. People want their bread eaten with taste. Mix the bran with water for the oxen. Rav Bar Shmuel cut the bread before waiting. There's no reason to delay here. This is very clean bread, very tasty, and it doesn't require salt. The practical halacha concerning interruptions will be discussed later in this year. But for now, let us focus on the matter of dipping the bread in salt. The Gemara indicates that salt is necessary when eating bread, and asking for it is not considered a hefsek in between the bracha and the eating, though one should ideally not interrupt even for this. In addition, we saw that according to Rashi, the reason for salt is to flavor the bread. The Shulchan Aruch rules based upon the Gemara that one should bring salt to the table before reciting the bracha of Amatzi. The Shulchan Aruch also rules based on the Gemara and Tosfos that if the bread has sufficient taste without the salt, salt is not necessary. The Gemara stated since the bread of the Reish Galusa was refined, salt was not necessary. Tosfos writes that in their time the bread was tasty enough without the salt, and it has the same status as refined bread, and salt was unnecessary. Our Tosfos then cite the opinion of Rabbeinu Menachem that salt should still be placed on the table to protect from calamity. We'll see what calamity we're talking about. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Kuf Samech Zayin, Lo Yivtach She'yavi Lefanad Melech or Liftan. You should not cut the bread until the salt or the relish is there. The lafik will prusap tziyah in order to dip. V'imi nakia, if the bread is very fine, or it's got spices, or bebelach kein shalanu, or what good tasting bread like ours, or niskavin lachol pas chareva, or if he wants to eat very plain bread, he doesn't have to wait for salt. The Mishnah Berurah explains the basis for this halacha, and also writes that the reason for the necessity of flavoring the bread is due to the respect necessary for the bracha b'motzi. We want the salt to be there so he doesn't have to go ask for it, and it'll be a hefsek for him. To be mafsik, even if it's going to spend some time they bring the salt. You should wait until they bring it before you make a bracha. Because of the key, like wheat bread. According to the reason for using salt given in the Shulchan Aruch, that there's no need to dip our bread or challah nowadays in salt, whether during the week or in Shabbat, because it tastes good. The Ramah writes that one should bring salt to the table for other reasons. Because Malcolm says the Ramah mitzvah laniach kol shulchan melach, kodim sheyibotza ki shulchan doimel mizbeach. The shulchan is like a mizbeach, v'achila kekorban. Eating is like a korban. Never called korban chatak. We'll make him in aparonos. They used to put salt on every korban. It protects from calamity. So, and remember, this isn't just Shabbos. This is Monday when you go wherever you are. If you have bread on the table, you want to have salt there as well. It's not a din in Shabbos. The Ramah appears to be offering two separate additional reasons for using salt. The first is because of the comparison between one's table and the altar and base of Mikdash. The Mishnah Berurah explains the comparison. When the base of Mikdash was around, we received atonement through the altar. Our table, we invite poor people to our table and other good acts that we do at our table. The second reason alluded to by the Ramah is that salt protects from calamity. The Mishnah Berurah explains that when those at the meal are waiting for the Hamotzi to be recited, they are not engaged in any mitzvah performance, for which the Sultan takes them to task. Therefore, the presence of the salt protects them. Another reason that we should all come back quickly from the Tzurba and the Balaboy should make Hamotzi right away. Mishnah Berurah says, Isa b'midrash Yisrael yoshim latinin zeh zeh. When Jewish people are at a table waiting for other people to wash their hands, ad shit lidem ve'hein below mitzvahs, and they're just sitting there idle. Hasatan mekatreged aleim. The Sultan prosecutes. Ubris melach megid aleim. According to the Ramah, one should have salt on the table for the reasons given, even if the bread already has sufficient taste. But it does not seem that one must actually dip the bread in salt. The Mishnah Berurah writes that the Kabbalistic custom is to dip the bread into salt 3 times. It is reported that Chassam Sofer did not dip his challah in salt on Friday night because no leftover remnants of the korbanos were offered upon the altar on Friday night. Apparently, the Chassam Sofer accepted the first reason of the Ramah and held that it did not apply on Friday night, but not the second. So we should dip the bread in salt 3 times. We should also note that according to Ramah's first reason, one should have salt on the table both on Shabbat as well during the week. But according to the second reason, salt on the table is required on Shabbat since it takes a few minutes for everyone to wash the Tis Yadayim. During the week, would that be necessary if everyone recites Hamotzi separately? What does one do if no salt is available? The Piskei Tshuva cites the Kaf HaChaim, who offers two possible options for one who doesn't have salt. V'imei lo melach yuchal lasos beprusas hamotzi ke'ein tibul gimel pamim b'chelek achar shalecha. You do a dip-like action by dipping it 3 times into another piece of bread. Ki lechem oisias melach. The letters of lechem are the same letters as salt. Umineg oilim be'eder melach l'tabel apos b'shar macholim. Or to dip the bread in other types of dips, v'tavshil m'sheish b'melach, that have salt. Or cooked dish that has salt. Aval l'tabel b'sukkar ein anachon, al piak kavonas v'ein bo inyan klal. But you should not dip it in sugar, because according to the Arizal and the kavonas, it has no effect. In practice, even Sfardim have the custom to always dip bread in salt. Lo yaskel levarach kodem sheyitvos b'yodav v'salechem, v'tov sheyitain beis yodav lapas b'shas shabrak, v'nogel l'tap lapas b'melach. That's next week. We'll learn the proper manner to cut it, when to cut the bread, where to cut the bread, distributing the bread to others, what are the dinim, and further hefsek, and probably conclude there.
I once heard a very nice thought, Ernie,
Yes.
about salt, but basically why is it called bris melach? Why? Because basically salt does 3 things. Salt gives taste. It's always compared to the Torah, salt, bris melach. So salt gives taste, salt cleans, and salt preserves, just like the Torah does. It gives taste, it preserves, and it basically gives. So that's what I heard.
Very nice. Very nice.
Ernie,
I'd like to share with you something that I've developed as my own minhag on hamotzi lechem and aretz. If you think about all the brachos that's made on food, motzi is a very unique one. When you say ber prietz, you pick up an apple from the tree. Ber priadamai, pick it from the ground. You've got it, right? It's very, 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 very easy to understand that Hashem makes the fruit. But when you make a bracha on hamotzi, the reality is Hashem made the wheat, maybe, right? Yes, Hashem made the wheat, but a lot of people think, well, I made the bread. I took the wheat and I threshed it and I ground it up and we did all the rising, a whole process to make the bread. So when we say hamotzi lechem haaretz, we're really acknowledging that we make our shtadlos, but ultimately Hashem is the result of everything. So the kavana that I have when I make hamotzi, especially on Shabbos, is the kavana of Hashem is the one that's really mefarnes all of us, and lechem is the bread of life, they call it. Hashem really gives us everything, and that's the kavanah I think people should have when they make a bracha on a motzi.
Chaim, you're miskaven to a very good pshat there, because when you see by Yosef, how did Yosef know that basically the baker would be hung, and basically the butler would live? So I saw a nice pshat on that. There's a pshat that what did the baker say? The baker said, "Ani asiti et halechem," right? And the butler said, "I brought the grapes," right? He understood that, I don't know, I have to look in the psukim, but he understood that he didn't make the wine, that the grapes made the wine. So once when Yosef heard the baker say, "Al koichi b'atzam yadi," exactly what you said, that I made the bread, you're in trouble. When you think you make things, you're in trouble. The butler said, "I brought the grapes and I squeezed the grapes and I gave the wine to Pharaoh." So that's exactly what you miscover. And I saw that board once. I don't remember who said it.
Sai,
Yeah, I just had I mean, I think the general practice is like, if certainly if you have, if the balabais, if they have people over, right, and he's there, everyone is yotze with his bracha. I think the general practice is you cut the bread and you dip it in the salt for the your guests. But hearing you, whose obligation is it? Is it the balabais obligation to dip it in salt, or is it the individual to dip it in the salt?
Well, you're distributing the lechem, so the lechem, you dip it in salt because we saw that there's
Well, that's for myself. That's my obligation. The way
Yeah,
if I
but you,
heard you right.
but you are
you were motzi everyone with the bracha, and you're also distributing the lechem to everybody.
Since you were moitzi, if the guy was making the bracha on his own, so then he would
Right.
have to do it. But once you moitzi everybody, so you moitzi them on the salt, I guess.
The
And
salt
you're
as
cutting
well.
and you're cutting the lechem into pieces and giving out the pieces.
Right.
So if you didn't do it, then they would be obligated to dip it themselves. But you did it for them. I wanted to say it in response to Chaim. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan said tonight. That even the baking of the bread, the fact that we have this concept of yeast, which puts air and it rises, and all of these we've considered natural events, but they're not human. The fact that we take wheat and we make it into this magnificent bread, it's also something that is divine. So that the Aruch HaShulchan said, things that we think are natural or whatever are not, that they're all acts of Hashem.
Right.
Okay.